I am Nipun Prabhakar. I'm an architect and a photojournalist and a writer. Um, so the studio is in Bhopal. It's a more sort of a collective called Dhammada Collective. Dhammada, a lot of people get confused with what Dhammada is. So Dhammada actually is made up of two words, Dhamma and Ada. So this came in a scenographer called Rajiv Sethi. So we were doing a project where he was the client. So we were talking about something, and he just came up with a term called dharmada. So dharmada means अपना धर्म अदा करना, whatever, to perform your duties. And I really like that word, but I felt that I wanted to replace dharma with dhamma, which is Buddhism, which is more open in some ways. So hence Dhammada came into picture. And the idea is that different people from different disciplines come together and work and essentially do their dharmada. And so they come together and work for the communities, either for the communities in the villages or in support of artisans who are related to buildings. For example, we work with people who work with stone. We try to support different people who work with crafts, building crafts especially. Uh, we also take some self initiatives, and we try to include artisans working in crafts which are dying, and try to include them in furniture in buildings. uh, yeah, so Dhamada is about working with communities and about collaborating with different people who have expertise in their own discipline. Dhamada Collective is a community design collective where people from different disciplines are coming together to solve issues in the rural areas of the country, uh, to work and promote people who work with hands, who are the building artisans, to cross just the silo of building and architecture that we have, and go beyond just putting bricks on a putting bricks together and make a wall, but also go beyond it and solve issues which are related to building industry but not necessarily tangible. For example, apart from working in the rural sector, where we are working in the villages, where we are designing houses for people to support their livelihoods using vernacular methods, we are also working on, for example, an app for the construction workers. So Dhammada has a idea of collaborating with different people, and one of the collaboration is with Sarth Khare, who's a UX designer. So I was always interested in working with the communities, realize, in understanding how people live, how people build their houses, because houses are essentially something that I always feel is inherent in the human nature. Even when kids play, they make they play ghar ghar, right? So they make houses by themselves. They use a bed sheet to make a tent for themselves. So building, just like I think eating or sleeping, is a part of human nature. So I wanted to understand, why architecture is important at all. Why do we need people to make buildings? And I was also always curious about how different communities have evolved, how different cultures, perform their everyday lives, and how architecture influences them. So uh, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to intern in Hunashala Foundation, because I had heard from my seniors that Hunashala is an organization which works a lot with different communities, but they also work in post-disaster environments, and they support artisans building who work with building crafts. So that was so. In 2015, I went to Hunashala Foundation to do an internship, and I think that shifted the perspective. from what I was taught in college to what I actually saw on ground. I was sent to one of their projects, which was in Muzaffarnagar, which is around 200 kilometers from Delhi. And it was in 2013, riots happened in Muzaffarnagar. So, a lot of communities fled their ancestral villages and settled in a place where they felt that they were more safe. So Hunashala was working with such families, with around 200 such families. And so I stayed there and I lived in the villages when we were rebuilding the houses. And I realized that it's very different from what we're taught in college, like the sense of, first of all, the sense of aesthetics, the, sense of aesthetics which I found in books that I was reading in the library versus what people were actually building and were proud of was different. So that was for one of the things which changed my perspective. I also understood how important it is to understand each and every space in detail and how profound impact it can have over the lives of people. uh, so that was something. Then after that I came back to college to finish my thesis, which was on Gandhi, on uh, how can we design in a Gandhian way, in a way that Gandhi would have preferred. But he was not an architect, so I wanted to understand his philosophy first. So I read a lot about him. I met people who practice in his, in his philosophy. There were some architects who had designed buildings on Gandhi, like Charles Correa, even Laurie Baker. So from that, I realized that there were many things that I could take out from his philosophy. For example, building from materials within 5 mile radius of the house, or using simple forms, something which can be replicated by everybody. So those kind of things. So that had a profound impact on how I would pursue my architecture further. After graduating, I joined Hunashala as a consultant architect, and I was in Nepal for around 2 years after the earthquake, rebuilding a settlement of Tibetan refugee nuns and monks, which are in different projects. So after the earthquake in 2015, a lot of houses were destroyed, and one of the major destruction was in a monastery called Bakhang. So we were living there and we were working there and we were, rebuilding with earthquake-proof techniques but vernacular materials. So living with those communities really, first of all, it really taught me that community architecture is very different from the general sense of architecture that we have. There are a lot of opportunities, but there are also a lot of limitation. Most of the time, the limitation of money, uh, and also of aspirations. Same time, we are also yes, you're making a building sustainable. We are retaining the good things and letting go of bad things. For example, the idea that mud has a property which absorbs the temperature and which insulates, it's cold in the summers and hot in the winters. So how do we retain that property, but at the same time also make it in a way that women of the house don't have to work too much in order to maintain it? So we are trying to find those kind of design solutions, because some of those design solutions are very simple. Like for example, just getting a nice plinth saves a lot of troubles with water coming in, or having nice like elongated chhajjas or overhangs helps the wall, and it protects the wall from rain. So these are very simple things which we can find it everywhere, but generally in practice it's not there. So those are the things that we focus on. And then new technology, um understanding that new tech is not something to fear from. In fact, we are very much open to using the latest cutting edge technology, which helps us, support our cause, which does not replace artisanship, which is which is deployable at the village level. Because generally, what happens is that new technologies are always there, always used in big cities, big towns, big buildings, Burj Khalifa has some advanced technology, but the village house does not because of lot of factors. How can a phone application help them in their everyday tasks? And we got some really, like interesting results. First of all, our perception of, like normal conversion. How do you, measure? How do you convert feet to meters? He said, I just, flip the tape, flip the inchy tape, and I get the conversion. Need for a ledger or for like a place where they can do calculations and they can store information. That would really help them in an application. Sometimes, that simple formula of Pythagoras theorem that the construction workers use to get a perfect right angle on site. Uh, so they can put exact dimensions and then, use that, can really be possible in an app. The direction, a compass in an app, or can also be useful for them. We also thought that we'll include some basic tutorial videos, because all of the content is there on the internet. YouTube has all of these, like tutorial videos of how to make a perfect art, or how to, make an exposed brick wall. But that's staggered and it's difficult to find. So we are thinking that we'll include like a special section for these kind of tutorial videos, which is curated. So that is one example of interdisciplinary work. But there's a project that we're working with MP Tourism, and in collaboration with Hunarshala Foundation, where we're working in almost 9 villages in Madhya Pradesh. The project is much bigger, but our part is the 9 villages. So in each village, we're designing and building at around 6 homestays, which is done in collaboration with people. So people who are the homeowners, they ultimately build, and they get some kind of subsidy in building an extra room with an attached toilet and bathroom in their courtyard. But with the help of organizations like us, where we go and we study their methods of construction, their typology, their use of spaces, and the materials, the local materials. So we build those homestays, and we design those homestays in a way that it's exactly uh, looks like part of one of the courtyards of the same house, but it also has amenities for people from outside, visitors to come and stay. So most of these villages are around interesting places uh, in Madhya Pradesh, near some tourist destinations. So we recently did a plunge pool inspired by our step well. This is Prakash, our intern. He recently made this pop up of the pool. So the idea is to, pay homage to traditional Indian step wells, uh, which a lot of people have forgotten about. So these are the kind of things that we work in Dhammuda Collective. I live parallel lives, and sometimes they go parallelly, and sometimes they intersect. So the other parallel life that I live is a life of a photojournalist, where I cover stories related to society, the current society, at intersection of culture, of tech, of architecture and built environment, where I write about uh, sustainability. I write about how, probably the things that I'm just looking around, observing. Uh, and I do long-term photo projects on things I find very interesting. For example, for last 8 years, I've been documenting bird houses in Kutch, which are traditional structures that people and communities come together and build for birds, mostly pigeons. So they are also called chabutras. And so I first started documenting them in 2015 when I went to Bhuj. And since then, I just wherever I go, I just take my camera and I take a photo and I talk to somebody. And these are huge bird houses. They are not like, one single room. So I categorize them like, bird apartments. So some of them are like multi-story apartments. I've seen a birdhouse which is like 40 bird floors high, which is actually a skyscraper. Then there are some low-cost birdhouses. The materials have transformed. So the older ones were made of stone. Uh, the new ones are made of concrete, but pigeons still come and live there. I guess they live everywhere. So this was published in New York Times, and I mean the best part of publishing in New York Times was the comments that I got. So that article got around, I think, 280 or 300 comments, and everybody was talking about their experiences with birdhouses. Somebody said that his grandfather built some birdhouse in Gujarat. Somebody said that why do people make birdhouses for pigeons, because pigeons are flying rats. So I like the wide range and spectrum of comments and some reviews and feedbacks. Then I was in Nepal. When I was in Nepal working on an architecture project, I was also documenting the doors and understanding the motifs and symbols on those doors. So I realized that just by looking at the door, you can identify so many different things, about the family which lives inside. For example, just looking at the door in Nepal, the traditional door, you can understand if the family is a Hindu family or a Buddhist family. If that family has a newlywed couple or not. If there's a couple who have crossed the age of 73 years. All of that is coded in symbols and motifs on those doors. So I think, this is just all of this is just out of sheer curiosity and passion for understanding new things and knowing about this. And then eventually newspapers and other magazines started hiring me for projects, which are projects like like assignments, photo assignments, or writing assignments. So that is the parallel life, and they intersect when I write about architecture, when photography informs architecture, or when architecture informs photography. So both of that happen simultaneously. Yeah, as I was talking earlier, I think I used to draw lines in different disciplines, and I used to switch modes, because there are like there are many ways. For example, if we have this model of a house, there are many ways to look at it. I can look at it through a perspective of an architect, where I'm looking at its details, I'm looking at its forms and design. Or I can look at it from a perspective of a photographer, where I feel that what is the right angle to show this, what is the place where I can get the maximum amount of view, or which is the photo or frame that I can take, where I can capture the real story of the people who live inside. So these are different perspectives of looking at the same thing. So they used to be different for me earlier, but then eventually the lines got blurred. For students and for young practitioners who are also struggling with this, I think they have to keep doing it, and persistence is the right word for that. They have to keep persisting on their varied interests. Eventually they'll get to know what they want to do. That's a very good question, and I often people ask me this. So there's one thing that I really feel is we have to be really passionate about things, and passion is always attractive. So if we see somebody being extremely passionate about something, we tend to get attracted towards them, and attraction sometimes gets converted into projects. So first step is definitely showing your work. So for example, I started writing, and when I just my experiences, and first thing I did was, like, when I wanted to share those stories with the world, I started my own blog, and I just kept. So it was I started it in 2008, and I just kept putting stories in there, paintings for her, and she paid me 1,000 rupees per A4. So I got money, and I also felt that okay, so this is also possible. Like, people approach you because they just saw me doing something. So it's also important to definitely show what you're good at out to the world. But at the same time, you don't have to put everything out. There's some things which are personal, there's some things which can be professional. So yeah, for me, like, I'm happy to use photography, design, and writing as ways of telling stories of other people to the world. So ultimately, architecture, photography, design, all of them are about storytelling. You just have to tell nice stories. It can be in a nice party, or it can be online, it can be in print. So in terms of managing my time, I have a very efficient model with me, where I use, there's a philosophy called the second brain. So it talks about, the second brain talks about that all the that our brain now, since there's so many things, our brain should be used for analysis and for storage and scheduling and everything. Our second brain should be used, which is your computer. So I use my computer and I use a software called Notion, and I use a philosophy called PPV, pillars, pipelines, and vaults. So pillars, pillars are the main things in our lives, like a house, like pillars of a house. If any pillar falls, your life will fall. For example, the pillars that I have are family and relationships, health, yeah, maybe something like that. Then pipelines are things which are going, like everyday tasks. So like, my to-do list for a day, or my list for a month, or my schedule of meetings. And vaults are things which are in storage, like a locker. So all the things I'm reading, important information in them, interesting articles I came across, some nice movie that I saw, some review that I wrote, those kind of things, they go in vault. So I manage my time based on a combination of all three. I'm very bad at managing my finances. I initially I was really passionate about not earning anything at all, and just putting all my time doing this. But slowly I realized that money is also important, and it's a risk that one takes when one gets into this kind of profession. So what I did was I found alternative avenues to earn money. So what I would do is I would write for international publications. I would photograph for international publications. So I would earn some money from there, and I would also dedicate 50 or more than 50% of my time doing things uh, in the villages. Where a lot of times I have to go pro bono. So it is all about balancing. It is about risking taking a decision, but it's also about earning. One feels valued also. So everybody should have a basic financial requirement and should work towards it. One good thing that architecture education does is it makes us jack of all and master of none. So I think because we, as architecture students, continuously give juries, present our work, defend our work, we are trained in a way that promoting what we do. So that really helps in most of the disciplines, be it photography, be it you know doing starting a startup, those kind of things. So they should definitely go beyond the traditional practice of building, and look for other avenues, because it also, like, inculcates more granular kind of thought process in you. Sometimes going out of the well and looking at the whole picture really helps you rethink the way that you are working on something. Different professions help in that. So I think for young architects, they should really explore other avenues. Generally, most of them have a passion, a parallel passion. A lot of them are good at drawing, or writing poetry or other things. So they must really stick on to that. And if they can find an alternative profession, that's good. But if they want to put complete focus on their work, that's also fine. But it should be supported by some or the other form of art, because one form of art always informs the other form of art. Yeah, that's a very good question, and that happens a lot. My profession as a journalist influences my architecture practice, or my architecture practice influences my journalism. I can share some examples. For example, when I was in Bakhang, in the Tibetan refugee settlement of the nuns, while I was designing the houses, which were made up of stone and different building techniques, I was also documenting the everyday lives of the nuns there. So what was happening was that while I was doing and designing architecture, I was also learning how to photograph, or how to maintain those relationships through photography. Uh, Staying there long term because of architecture helped me do a long term photography work. So and then eventually I came back to India after some years. I wrote about it. I published an article in Future Art on that. Uh, on the other hand, for example, I've been documenting these bird houses and photographing them, and just talking to people about them, and researching about them. I started feeling that why shouldn't the buildings that I am designing, why shouldn't they include houses for birds? So there was a project that we were doing in village Raipur Naya Kheda, and in that house, while it was in construction, I just asked one mason to put a earthen pot, a matka, in the wall while it was getting constructed, so you get a cavity. So that was the intention of that, was that it gives a space for a bird to create a nest. So then I started thinking about how do you include animals in design, in the buildings that we are making. And because of that, I started researching. I got to know there's one professor from MIT. He recently, I don't know if it's happening or not, but he asked me to design spaces for animals in his farm in the US. So we're still going back and forth about it. But I wrote an article on how different organizations, different people, different architects have designed for non-humans, uh, and not necessarily a separate building, but how can we include them in the buildings that we do. So these are the kind of things where one profession informs the other. uh, I also learned the art of storytelling through photojournalism, but I use that a lot in architecture. So architecture allows me to work, because architecture is a long term job. Like every project takes 1 year or more than that. While photography assignments sometimes are just a day. you know you just go and photograph for a day or two and come back. So that patience I learned in architecture, which I use in photography. A very important question. A lot of people ask people who work with natural materials that how can you do that in a building which is multi-story? How do you deal with urban density? Well, I mean, the disadvantage with urban scale or the urban areas is land availability, the density. In rural areas, you can go horizontally, but in urban areas, sometimes you have to go vertically. So sometimes we do discuss this, that how do we work in the cities, although we have probably never worked in a city as Dhamada. But now we are trying to do that, and we are thinking that even if we have a building, but we can still work on the interiors and use natural materials. For example, even the walls, the paint, the modern paint that we do, it emits a lot of VOC gases. A very good alternative for that is lime plaster, which actually absorbs moisture. It is cooler in temperature, and it also promotes artisans. It's not an industrial material. So the money that you're, and this is something that we focus on all the projects, that where is the amount of money going? Is it going to the industries, like the cement industry, or the, let's say, the flooring tile industry, or is it going to the artisans? So probably if there are two houses or two structures which both cost the same, but the amount of money which goes in the hands of people or in the hands of industrialists, that is the difference that it creates. So we really focus on that, and we focus on the money. We focus that the money goes to artisans rather than the industrialists. So even so, similarly in case of lime plaster, the same thing happens. You are paying to the artisans, you're paying to the artisanship, you're retaining that, and you're getting a benefit of a cooler temperature. Also something which stays. You don't have to redo the cement plaster again and again. It stays there. Then we think of flooring, which is another thing. So what are the kind of flooring that you're, instead of putting ceramic tiles, we try to put terracotta tiles or handmade tiles like Atangudi tiles, or in MP the Galicha tiles. So these kind of finishing materials we focus a lot on in urban scale. Then again, even if we have apartments, if we have buildings, we can still think of places to accommodate non-humans, not just birds but animals. We can have public places or benches, or other elements of urban design which also give shelter to street dogs or to the birds. So these are the kind of things that we can still think of, and it'll make a lot of difference. I think inspired, it's an everlasting curiosity that I have of how does this thing work, what is this community, what is their history, what is their what is in their literature, how do they make what they make. So it's just a curiosity which is there, and that is something which just keeps me going. And that is one thing. Also about building relationships, making friendships, meeting new people, uh, and because that happens, projects also come in. So friendships lead to a lot of times, not intended to, but lead to some collaborations. uh, yeah, that is what supports my passion. So questions, always asking questions, and always being curious about how things work. Well, I would say just go on and explore whatever they want to. Don't be limited. Always question what is being taught to you. Always question what the society expects from you, and always just take one step beyond what is required. Just taking that one step beyond what is needed makes a lot of difference. Make mistakes, be proud of them.
I think this is it.
Thank you.